session. My lecture is titled Thinking Machines, Philosophic and Psychoanalytic Paradigms in Digital Humanities. This is the simple title of this lecture. It has two parts. The first part of the title says Thinking Machines, and the second part of the title is about the philosophical and
This meeting is
psycho,
being recorded.
psychoanalytical paradigms that we find, that we try to trace in digital humanities. I hope I am sufficiently audible. We are having heavy rain here, and there is a chance that maybe we will have a network issue once in a while. Hopefully, everything will be fine. So, what do I mean by this title? I think the title is self explanatory. We are looking at some of the philosophic and psychoanalytic ways of looking at digital humanities. In other words, I would say, um, the purpose of this lecture is to invite your attention not to the digital in digital humanities, not to the humanities in digital humanities, but to the human in digital humanities. In other words, I wish to propose that digital humanities is not just about tools and applications. It is also about ghosts. It is also about unconscious structures, hidden desires, memories that dwell beneath its bright interface. And by drawing on a few key thinkers, I aspire, time permitting, to look at four or five major thinkers as examples. Um, I will look at Freud, Lacan, Martin Heidegger, Jacques Derrida, Foucault, Adorno. I mean, as time permits. Basically, it is not like we should go through all these thinkers to have an idea. We are looking at each thinker and trying to make a digital humanities sense of what they have said, to locate what it means to be human in digital humanities. Now, when we think of thinking machines, the first part of our title, thinking machines, what you know, uh, thinking machines. That phrase invokes a double meaning. There are two ways of looking at that phrase, thinking machines. You can understand it as machines that think. You can also understand it as what we think about machines. Machines that think and what we think about machines. These are two ways in which we can understand that primary phrase, thinking machines. So, the first sense, machines that think. We are putting the machine at the center. We are making machine the subject. Machines that think. At one level, thinking machines are, you know, literally machines endowed with the ability to think, with the semblance of cognition. You can talk about algorithms, neural networks, AI models, databases, machines that think. And for a change, I would want to think of digital humanities as a little bit of a metaphor or a persona, and say that digital humanities can also be thought of as a thinking machine, a vast assemblage of codes, archives, texts, and multiplicity of interpretations. Crucially, digital humanities thinks not only in logic. I guess many of the discussions we have had so far centered around the digital dimension of digital humanities, but not so much about the human dimension of digital humanities. And that is where I would, you know, probably by stretching this to a certain limit, try to think of dreams, desires, and ghosts in the unconscious biases we encode, in the longings we project, in the cultural hauntings we preserve in digital uh, archives, in other words, in digital humanities. This is the basic idea I want to, foreground. And when we do that, we have to also realize the other side of it, the other meaning. What do we think of machines? Or thinking machines can also mean how we think about machines, or what we think about machines as object. Here, when we say machines as object, the phrase thinking machines turns reflexively upon us. The question is basically about us. What do we think about machines? And what fantasies and fears accompany this projection of our desires and fears and fantasies onto machines? My dear friends, if you think about it a little more metaphorically, you can find that in digital humanities, every data set is haunted by what it excludes. Every algorithm carries the unconscious of its coders, programmers. Every archive murmurs with spectral presences. What am I talking about? Of course, philosophy, psychoanalysis. Philosophy asks, thinking machines, so what is the nature of thinking in machines? We are trying to not theorize it in a strictly technical sense, rather, we would theorize it in a literary sense, in an artistic sense. What could be the nature of thinking in machines? Philosophy. And psychoanalysis would ask, what is our desire in making machines think? What desires do we have when we say that we are trying to make these machines think? What unconscious fantasies do we project onto these machines? Basically, two key takeaways. Probably, if we are into this lecture, probably we will have a couple of takeaways. The first one, if digital humanities is a thinking machine, then it thinks not in logic and binary numbers alone, but also in dreams, desires, and the ghosts we we smuggle into it. We smuggle, we infiltrate into the fortress of digital humanities with our own dreams, our own hauntings, our own desires, our own fears, our own memories, our own trauma. And that is when digital humanities becomes a thinking machine. Another takeaway would be to study digital humanities psychoanalytically, and then and then to hear, um, behind the click of the mouse pad and the tap on the keypad, to hear the anguished sighs of the unconscious and the whispered laughter of the ghosts. That is another way to look at digital humanities. My dear friends, let me invite you to Freud. Now, Freud doesn't need any invitation. You don't need any invitation to Freud, but let us try to look at what Freud has to do with digital humanities. His ghosts even wouldn't forgive us if we connect him to digital humanities, I'm sure. But then Freud wouldn't complain. His ghosts are always available for our interpretations. So, think about Freud. Sigmund Freud taught us that behind, beneath the rational ego lies the unconscious. And what is the unconscious? It is a repository of repressed desires, anxieties, memories. In digital humanities, we can speak of another unconscious, something that Freud didn't speak of, but I am uh, yoking him with something he didn't speak about, the digital unconscious. What is the digital unconscious? What I would call the digital unconscious would be the invisible codes, the algorithms, what we call the metadata, the infrastructures that underlie every digital text. In his the interpretation of dreams, Freud says something about dreams. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. What is it? The interpretation of dreams is a royal road, is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. Oh my God, are we going to dreams as well? Let us see. Let us see. Just as dreams, just as our dreams disguise unconscious wishes through tricks like condensation or displacement, digital systems disguise their logics behind seamless interfaces. What we see is the interface. What we don't see is the coding. Sigmund Freud reminds us that what surfaces or what appears on the surface is always mediated, always disguised, always distorted. Same with digitality. The visible interface conceals the operations of algorithms. Look at it in some other way. What appears to us as natural search results, say for example, we Google something, what appears to us as word clouds or network graphs. In the last couple of lectures, the speakers were showing us these things, word clouds, network graphs, engrams, all these things. You know, these things are always already structured by processes that we do not see. Think of a Google search, for example. Google search gives us answers instantly, thousands of answers. But the ranking system, indexing, and metadata, the digital unconscious, remains totally invisible to us. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm taking you a little closer and a little deeper. Think of Freud's concept of the dream work. It is especially illuminating. Sigmund Freud stated that dreams don't just show us thoughts directly, rather, dreams transform them through a process which he calls dream work. Dream work. This dream work has three main tricks. The first one is condensation. What is condensation? Yeah, we have studied this in BA, MA, Freud's ideas of condensation, displacement, and symbolization. What is condensation? Dreams squeeze a lot of meanings into one single image or word. For example, your teacher must have told you in the class, seeing me, seeing your professor in a dream may embody authority, knowledge, anxiety about exams, or even sometimes a father or mother figure. Condensation. And on the internet, this is like a hyperlink or a hashtag. One click or word takes you to multiple layers of meaning. Think of displacements, the second strategy, the second trick in dream work. What is displacement? In dreams, the important meaning is shifted onto something less obvious. For example, the same examples that we listen to in our classrooms. Anxiety about an exam appears as a dream about forgetting to wear your shirt before you come to school, before you come to college, or a dream about forgetting to wear your shoes and you are in a public place. This this is like a displacement of an anxiety about an exam, or longing for a lost love shows up as a dream about missing a train. You can connect, but it is far less significant. you know Something important is shifted onto something far less obvious. In the digital world, this happens when meaning moves from one node or one post to another in a network. The real weight of significance is elsewhere. You see the post, but the significance of that lies elsewhere. And the third trick in dream work: symbolization. Dreams turn feelings and thoughts into symbols or images. Dreams turning our feelings or thoughts into some images. What is it? Take an example: water flooding the room. Something that many of us have seen. Water flooding the room. It might probably symbolize overwhelming emotions. Or you are flying. Very good, flying. But what could it symbolize? It could symbolize freedom. It could symbolize ambition. It could symbolize escaping constraints. Lot of possibilities. And on the digital platform, we do the same, where through emojis, GIFs, icons, using a simple pictures to stand in for a whole emotional state or complex idea. That is why when we send a message on WhatsApp without an emoji, it creates a lot of problems more often than not. But when we add an emoji to it, it smoothens the whole thing, or it darkens the whole thing depending on the context. But the idea is it carries a world of signification. A simple emoji, you send a message to your beloved and you are asking, where are you? You put a question mark. Okay, fine, grammatically correct, but where are you? Depending on the mood of the person who is listening and depending on the context in which this is said, this can be, where are you? Where are you? It can be understood in thousand different ways. Where are you? And then you put a heart next to it, or then you put a smiley next to it with something. The whole context changes. Digital platforms symbolize as well. So this is just an opening. I'm just taking you into this way of looking at things. So just as dreams disguise and reshape our thoughts, digital texts disguise and reshape meanings through links, through shifts, and through these emojis and memes and symbols. T.S. Eliot, in his Wasteland, says, "These fragments I have shod against my ruins. These fragments I have shod against my ruins." My dear friends, the internet as archive is precisely such a shoring up of fragments. Yet, these fragments, like Freud's dream work, speak more in condensation and displacement rather than in clarity. Let us move on to something more interesting, more slightly more complex, probably. Freud talked about something called the death drive, a deep tendency in us not to die, but to repeat the same actions over and over again, even when they don't bring pleasure. Doing something repeatedly that urge to do that, even if that doesn't bring us any pleasure, as if we are pulled back toward stillness or inertia. Doing something again is something like going back as well. He called this the repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion, a compulsion that exceeds pleasure. If you think about today's digital habits, it feels very similar. The endless scrolling on social media, the loop of one more episode on Netflix or Amazon Prime, the non-stop gaming cycles, or even the urge to hoard PDF files. We just collect. These activities trap us in circles or cycles where nothing really changes. We keep doing the same thing almost automatically. And in this way, our digital behaviors echo Freud's idea of the death drive, a restless repetition that paradoxically points towards a kind of stillness. It is like running in place. There is no displacement happening. You are still at the same place. Compulsions that exceed pleasure, enactments of digital death drive. And Freud argues, and this is something that very beautifully put, Freud argues that living beings tend toward the inanimate state. Living beings tend towards the non-living, inanimate state, meaning that living beings seek a return, an end within the endless cycle of life and energy. Going back, we seek an end in the endless. Think of the different meanings of the word end. We seek an end in the endless. The very algorithm mirrors Freud's insight. I don't want to draw any conclusions. I leave all conclusions to you. I'm just shoring up these fragments before you for your consideration, for your condensation and symbolization. My dear friends, I wind up this discussion on Freud with just one statement. The unconscious can be considered as the dark continent of the psyche that leaves no footprints or rarely leaves any footprints. But then the unconscious, the dark continent of our psyche, these days leaves its digital footprints on our search histories. Just think about that. You saw what happened when certain people search certain things on AI. You see how courts these days use our search histories to issue a divorce notice, or you know many things like that. We leave our digital footprints on our search histories. We trust AI and technology so much that our dark psychic things get sublimated, get presented in words in AI. Think of the questions that many of us ask AI. We are telling AI things that we have never told anyone. Go back and look at those questions, and you will find that you have said AI things that you yourself don't know about yourself. This is the extent to which it is getting psychological and psychoanalytic. I will take you to another person in psychoanalysis, and this person is even more dangerous. If Freud was little bit difficult but a lot fantastic, not very realistic, this is another person, Jacques Lacan. And Lacan's mirror stage describes the infant's jubilant but illusory recognition of its own image as a unified whole. This is what Lacan says in his work Eccrits. The mirror stage is a drama whose internal thrust is precipitated from insufficiency to anticipation. I'll explain. Sounds a little vague. In other words, Lacan's mirror stage is when a baby first recognizes itself happily in the mirror. What happens? The baby feels delighted. The baby feels a wholeness and a unification. But this unity, this sense of wholeness, is an illusion. This is the what Lacan means by the mirror stage. And by extension, think of it in digital humanities, in our digital culture, we go through mirror stages not only in our infancy, but throughout our lives. And in that sense, by you know, reading back, you can say that our infancy never ends in the digital humanities. We are always already infants. Our Instagram profiles, our avatars, our Facebook timelines, these things give us a neat, polished image of ourselves. But then, like the mirror stage, this is a misrecognition. In reality, our identities remain fragmented in the digital space, shifting and shaped by the digital world around us. I would say that the digital platforms are mirrors par excellence. You know, when you uh, go enter those changing rooms in some textiles, you see lot of mirrors. Or think of those mirror traps, labyrinthine mirror traps in um, in museums. What happens? Social media platforms create a hall of mirrors where our self is endlessly constructed and reconstructed through images. Instagram feeds, for example, curate an image of wholeness that absolutely masks the fragmentation. A kind of plastering happens, kind of plastering, a kind of PWD work happens. And this is not very much unlike the picture of Dorian Gray. Remember, picture of Dorian Gray, an image that reflects both selfhood and alienation. Lacan also spoke about the big other, the larger system of language and rules that organize our desires. Today, what is the big other? I would say the big other today takes the form of algorithms. Platforms like Google, Facebook, or Netflix don't just reflect our choices, they predict our choices and they guide them. Think of YouTube, for example, simple example. You start viewing YouTube videos for a couple of days, and then YouTube anticipates our desires, scripting what we watch. Even if we are so tech savvy, even if we are very digitally aware citizens, we tend to fall into this death loop. YouTube feeds you things that you like. We talk about dopamine. We desire through the algorithm, and the algorithm desires through us. Think about it once again. We desire through the algorithm, and the algorithm desires through us. Or the algorithm in turn shapes its desires through us. Think about how far it is going. The algorithm shapes its own desires by projecting it onto us. And what is the takeaway here? For the digital humanities, this means we cannot only use algorithms to study texts. We must also ask, and this is a task of every digital humanist, you must also ask how algorithms themselves structure subjectivity, desire, and meaning in this digital age. I mean, before that, okay, I'll tell you this. Lacan also stated that it is through the other that the ego is constituted. Through the other, our ego is constituted. In the digital age, this other is no longer simply human, but it is algorithmic. The big algorithmic other that validates our posts. How does validation happen? Through likes, comments, and shares. And what we see is not ourselves, but a specular self curated for others, akin to the mirror stage where the infant jubilantly misrecognizes its own unity. So the ultimate takeaway would be the psychoanalytic lesson is that digital humanities must account not only for data but for the new forms of subjectivity being shaped, being fragmented, and being mirrored back in digital cultures. I leave it to you. These fragments I showed before you, and I move on. Let me take you to Martin Heidegger, somebody who I love a lot. People ask me, why do you have to always go to Martin Heidegger in every lecture? I cannot live without him. I feed on Martin Heidegger a lot. Martin Heidegger, in The Question Concerning Technology, he's written things other than being and time. He has talked about the question concerning technology as well. In that work, he says, he speaks about enframing. What is enframing? The word is gestel, Gestell. I'll explain. Let me just first quote you. Enframing means the gathering together of that setting upon which sets upon man, that is, challenges him forth to reveal the real, the mode of ordering as a standing reserve. Understood everything? Understood nothing? No problem, let us simplify it. Martin Heidegger says that technology is not just a tool that we use. Fine? Technology is not just a tool. It is a way of looking at the world. Simple. Now, his term gestal or enframing means that technology makes us see everything around us as resources. What are resources? Things we can use, measure, control, and optimize. So, enframing means that technology makes us see everything around us as resources we can use and misuse and abuse. For example, forests become timber stock, wood. Rivers become energy sources. We see sand in rivers. People become human resources. Everything becomes a resource. Yeah, this way of seeing is powerful, no doubt, but it is also dangerous. It hides other way of experiencing the world, like wonder, like beauty, like mystery, like poetry. In digital humanities, we often use computers to study literature. I haven't yet finished explaining what Heidegger said. In digital humanities, we use computers to understand literature. And here we treat texts as data. For example, for mining words, we use text as data. For counting patterns, we use text as data. For making graphs and visualizations, we use text as data. All these are useful, no doubt. But this risks reducing literature to something mechanical as well. I'm not saying something new. This is known. Think of it but a little bit more. A Shakespeare play becomes just a list of word frequencies. A poetry collection becomes a map of repeated terms, connected terms. What happens to the richness of literature? Its beauty, emotion, and mystery may all get lost. And this is why Heidegger warns that if we only look at literature as data, we might miss what is truly alive. His favorite word. We may lose sight of being itself if we look at things as data alone. We might miss being beings, the poetic, the mysterious, the unquantifiable, that deep, unexplainable part of art and heart and life. That is it that we are missing. But Heidegger also says technology is not all bad. No, no, not at all. He hints that in technology lies a saving power. There is a saving grace. What is it? If we use it thoughtfully, technology can reveal new insights without destroying meaning. Let's look at it. Digital humanities if practiced critically, correctly, can open new forms of revealing, can open new forms of epiphany and revelation, not to dominate texts, but to dwell differently with them. Dwell in both senses. To dwell, to find out meaning, something like that. It can also mean to dwell, to live, to inhabit. In other words, we can use data and analysis not just to reduce literature, but to see it in different ways, see it in new ways. For example, we have Franco Moretti's idea of counting genres and words, known as distant reading. It shows us big patterns. You saw those graphs the other day in one of the lectures. Those big patterns, you give one emotional state, you give one idea, and it all becomes graphs. Anything can be done like that. But then we cannot stop there. The point is, we must not stop there. We must still return to close reading to feel the poetry. So, from close reading to distant reading to close reading, this thing has to happen, otherwise, we are in trouble. And literature, by nature, always resists being fully turned into data, turned fully scientific. Think about what happened to I.A. Richards. Think about what happened to Northrop Frye. These people all tried to make literature scientific. And what happened? John Keats reminds us in Ode on a Grecian Urn, beauty is truth, truth's beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. Simple idea. Think about it in this context. Beauty and truth are beyond measurement. No graph or data set can capture them completely. Beauty exceeds data. Truth resists quantification. Martin Heidegger calls this the saving power. Technology can reveal, but it must not exhaust. It can reveal, it can help us, but it must not exhaust. Chew on this. Can Hamlet be enframed? Can Hamlet be enframed? Are we enframing Hamlet by resorting to digital humanities? Martin Heidegger says technology tends to enframe, to reduce things into resources. But poetry and art, according to Martin Heidegger himself, do the opposite. They open a world where we can truly dwell. Language is our home, and in that home do we dwell. A space of meaning, beauty, and reflection. So, the ultimate question this poses probably is something like this: can digital humanities projects move beyond reduction? Instead of flattening texts into data, can they create digital spaces where we experience literature as living, breathing art? Almost a year back, I had given a discussion, a lecture on digital humanities where I spoke extensively on the possibilities. Here I am talking about the threats because as I see digital humanities evolving, I find the human disappearing. And it is fine that in a post-humanist world, the human must disappear or at least make way and move to the margins. It's fine, but then certain things that are humane must still continue. Certain beautiful things must not be lost because it is a loss of it is a loss for everyone. And it is these things, these values that keep us humane and human. And we don't want humanity to erode. We don't want values to erode. We want newness, we want new ways of looking at things, but not at the expense of values. And here, let me take you to Derrida and his idea of ontologies. And well, probably I shouldn't talk much about ontologies. I should talk about digital archive fever. Archive fever. Derrida's archive fever, you might have heard about this in a few occasions, on a few occasions. Archive fever speaks of the paradox of the archive. The drive to preserve is also the drive to exclude, to repress, to forget. Every archive is structured by power, and that is where you can move to Foucault as well. But let us stick to Derrida for the time being. Every archive is structured by power, by what it remembers and what it silences. Digital archives guarantees promise immortality, the cloud, the server farm, the endless preservation of human expression. Wow, wonderful. But what of digital obsolescence? Dead links, unreadable formats, vanished servers. The digital archive is haunted by its own fragility. Derrida would call this hauntology, a hauntology, the ghostly presence of what is absent, the spectral traces of what cannot be fully archived. In digital humanities, then, the question is not only what we archive, but what haunts that archive. What voices, what languages and lives remain excluded or ghostly, spectral? In Archive Fever, Derrida says the archive is at once commencement and commandment. Commencement and commandment. The digital archive preserves endlessly but also excludes. Every act of archiving is also an act of forgetting. Think of the colonial example. Digital archives of colonial history in India often omit oral traditions. You use those graphs and engrams, and you see oral traditions are lost. Local knowledges are lost. Subaltern voices are lost. What is preserved, probably purposefully and consciously, is the empire's record, while what is lost is the lived experience, the lived reality. Emily Dickinson once very beautifully wrote, the past is such a curious creature. To look her in the face, a transport may reward us or a disgrace. The archive is such a creature. The archive is such a creature. It rewards us by preservation, but it disgraces us by exclusion as well. The hauntological aspect is clear in digital forgetfulness, digital oblivion, digital obsolescence. Early websites, floppy disks, vanished servers. Think about those things. All leave spectral traces coming back to us like Senior Hamlet's ghost and telling us, remember me. Archive fever is therefore not just about preservation, but about being haunted by what cannot be preserved. I'll give you a simple example. If we do a simple keyword search for love in Shakespeare, it's a very broad example. Let us look at love, the word love in Shakespeare. Now, what happens? What search results we get? We reduce rich emotions into just numbers or entries. Fine. But we need to remember something else. Shakespeare is not just some ordinary writer, and literature is not just some ordinary art. So, an extraordinary art in the hands of an extraordinary master craftsman may have very different ways. Love may be described using totally unthinkable words. Think of Romeo describing love in Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 1. Love, how does he describe? Using words like smoke, fire, sea, madness. Now, will any search result using any algorithm give us these as search results for love? Romeo describes love as a smoke raised with the fume of sighs, being purged, a fire sparkling in lover's eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with lover's tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. How many of these would be counted as love? And then How many are we missing? We miss more than we get. Or think of jealousy. Jealousy is described as a, Iago, Othello. Jealousy is described as a green-eyed monster. So, while a keyword search for love or jealousy in Shakespeare yields raw counts, the poetic surplus, the smoky fires, the green eyed monsters, the bloody tyrants, the griefs that walk and sleepwalk, remains invisible to the data. This is what Derrida calls archive fever, the urge to preserve and catalog everything, even if it makes the text feel lifeless. Every archive is haunted by its own exclusions. What we digitize, we preserve, sure, but what we neglect, we condemn to spectral silence. So, I mean, we are at 11:50, and I think I wouldn't take you to any other writer. There are so many people every writer can be brought into this framework and interpreted using the frameworks we have in digital humanities, no doubt at all. But the purpose is not that. The purpose is just to, um, slightly peer into that space called digital humanities using philosophy, using psychoanalysis, and see what is there and what options do we have. So, I mean, if I conclude, so what emerges when we bring Freud, Lacan, Martin Heidegger, and Derrida into the orbit of digital humanities? My dear friends, digital humanities is not merely a new method, it is a new condition of being, a new way in which human subjectivity, human desire, human memory is entangled with machines. The entanglement of man and machine in digital humanities is a new condition of being. This is what I'm trying to propose. It is a new condition of being. And to quote from Derrida, from his work Paper Machine, the future is necessarily monstrous. The figure of the future, that is, that which can only be surprising, that for which we are not prepared. Think about it once more. We speak about the monstrous birth of post structuralism, so many things. It comes from here, I guess. Paper Machine. The future is necessarily monstrous. The figure of the future, that is, that which can only be surprising, that for which we are not prepared. So too is the future of digital humanities. Monstrous, surprising, unprepared, might find us unwary. We might be caught off guard, for it is not merely a set of tools, but a psychoanalytic and philosophical condition, a new condition of being. So, if I conclude, what we speak of thinking machines perhaps is not the machine that thinks, but we who think through the machine and the machine that thinks through us. The digital is our collective dream work. The digital is our collective mirror. The digital is our collective archive. The digital is our collective hauntology. To study digital humanities, then, is to psychoanalyze not just texts, but ourselves. This is something we should never forget. What is brought under the scanner is not text, it is ourselves. It is ourselves. As Keats wrote in The Fall of Hyperion, a poet is a sage, a humanist, a physician to all men. A physician to all men. The true task of digital humanities is not merely to measure, but to heal. What? To confront our digital unconscious, to engage the algorithmic big other, to rescue literature from enframing, and to dwell with the ghosts of our archive. I guess this makes some sense. I hope, at least, that this lecture, this deliberation, must have given you some food for thought into new ways of understanding and appreciating and being careful about digital humanities. My dear friends, if Sigmund Freud heard the hum of the server farm, he would call it the unconscious made machine. If Lacan saw Instagram, he would say the mirror stage never ends today. If Heidegger browsed the digitized Hamlet, he would call it the standing reserve of tragedy. If Derrida opened Google Ngrams, he would speak of spectrality and the trace. Thankfully, all of them are dead. They will not haunt us, but their ideas are here to haunt us, and perhaps our very project in digital humanities is to dwell within these paradoxes. So that is where I will wind up the session. Thank you everyone for listening. Questions always welcome. All questions, every question is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. Dear participants, if you have any queries, please place it in the chat box so that sir can go through your queries and he will address your questions.
Exactly. Please feel free to ask questions. Do we have anything in the chat box? Should I assume that everyone is spellbound? Should I assume everyone is asleep? Somewhere between sleeping and waking, to die, to sleep, perchance. Yeah,
Participants, please make it interactive so that we can share our knowledge. Our doubts can be cleared. Please share your questions so that we can also know new topics as well.
all
All are
satisfied.
satisfied.
Oh my God. So you wouldn't even want lunch. Spellbound, Juvina, thank you. Thank you. But please ask something. I want to talk more actually. We think through machines which think through us, seeking an end in an endless. Thank you so much.
Zara
Tha-
ma'am, she is one of
ah,
our
I
speakers.
saw
On
she's the
Monday,
next.
she is speaking.
She is speaking, the next speaker, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
on Monday, she is speaking, sir.
I saw her in previous lectures as well. Somebody who attends it.
Yes.
Yeah. In what ways does Freud's idea of the unconscious resonate with contemporary theories of digital archives, algorithms, and hidden data structures? I mean, Nancy, thank you for that question. Uh, my simple answer would be, is there any way that Freud's ideas don't resonate with our theories of digital archives, algorithms, and hidden data structures? Think of his classification of the id, ego, and superego. You can expressly, I don't even have to explain, you can expressly find the parallels in digital archives, in algorithms, and in data structures. Think of his classification of the human mind as being structured into the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. Very much evident. We touched upon those things as well today. Think of Sigmund Freud's ideas on pleasure pain principle. What that something that yields pleasure is something that we love doing, and the painful things that we don't like. This is the basic idea with pleasure pain principle. Apply it directly and you will have problems galore, because we have people doing things today that lead to, say for example, brain fogging, that lead to dopamine toxification, a lot of problems. We are losing ourselves in AI. All these things tell us that pleasure pain principle needs a rethinking, because these days pleasure is not something visible, pleasure is not something tangible, pleasure is something that happens not in our conscious mind even. It is something that happens perhaps in the subconscious, perhaps in the unconscious, and that pleasure leads us to big pain, no doubt about it, because people are struggling to sleep. 90% of the population is struggling to sleep because of technology. So lot of possibilities. And if you look at Instagram, I mean, engrams, Google Books engrams, for example, the way things are layered, definitely we must take a look at engrams. And the way things are, it doesn't give a clear picture. And why it doesn't give a clear picture, an honest picture, is something we need to ask ourselves. And when does it not give clear pictures? When we ask sharp questions. If you compare for example, William Shakespeare with John Keats, if you put those two queries, I'm sure that you will get a fair enough reply. But then put something like something that is not very much evident, something not very much obvious, and you will get answers, you will get graphs, you will get diagrams that contradict common sense. So why? What is happening? What is it that these deep structures miss? It is where we have to problematize and question and bring digital humanities to task, not to destroy it, but to perfect it. And um, that is what I would say. We can use any theory. Think of 1903, three contributions to a theory of sex from Sigmund Freud. Infinite possibilities. It is about child sexuality, mostly. Infinite possibilities. Think of interpretation of dreams. Infinite possibilities. Think of ideas like Oedipus complex. Think of, Freud has given us lot of tools, and the best beautiful thing about Freud is his tools can be used everywhere. Very, very flexible. And that is the beauty of Freud. So your question, very much evident, very much obvious. His idea be be applied throughout these theories in non-finite ways, in n number of ways, lot of possibilities. I'm sure you are getting me. Then an interesting and mind-boggling lecture in which various concepts from literary and psychoanalytic world were tied together with the digital world beautifully. Thank you, Hina. Thank you so much. Another Hina says, Hina Kosaria, may I have the recording since I am in college? That is over to the organizers. Finally, first, I want to pursue my PhD in digital humanities. From where should I begin? Ekta, please do it. Digital humanities is no longer a burgeoning field. It is very much here to stay, and lot of possibilities are there, lot of opportunities are there in digital humanities still. It is, I would say, one of the trending topics these days, alongside food and health humanities and blue humanities, no question. So where should you begin? um, to begin simple thing, to begin, try to understand what digital humanities is. I mean, if you attend all these lectures in this FDP2, you are missing a lot of things that are the obvious, things that are basic. I'm not saying you don't know the basics, but I'm speaking in general. It is very important that we understand digital humanities properly, to think about digital humanities. And digital to understand digital humanities, don't always think about applying digital humanities to text. This is a mistake that I see happening a lot. I also see computations and algorithms playing an even bigger role than is required. I think we should remember that we should keep both to an appropriate level. We need computational elements, we need algorithms, but we also need the humanities element. And as a humanities person, I would always want to stress that. I mean, it is up to you to decide whether you want to use digital to throw light on the humanities aspect or humanities to throw light on the digital aspect. But ultimately, I believe that we should have some ethical concerns as well, where we think that what we do, it is not about being nationally relevant or religiously, morally correct, not that way. But we should have some ethics as well, and that is where we should ask the right questions. And to ask the right questions, we should know what it is. So, knowing is very important, knowing digital humanities. Then you start reading a lot more about how digital humanities is being utilized across the globe. Don't go into things that you are not very comfortable with. Say, for example, uh, I committed this error. Once I was into digital humanities, of course, I loved the ideas. I entered it and I started reading things that didn't make much sense to me. You know, yeah, if you are a literature person, yeah, Lacan is also difficult, yeah, Foucault is also difficult, but that sort of difficulty is slightly different from the difficulty posed by algorithms, difficulty posed by diagrams and and data sets. So we have to be clear in our mind, we have to situate ourselves somewhere. You know, who are you and what are your interests in pursuing digital humanities? Is it just to do a PhD? If it is just to do a PhD, how much are you going to spend? Not money. Of course, you have to spend a lot of money for Scopus and Web of Science publication. That's the sad part. But how much of your intellectual energy and effort do you want to invest into this PhD? This is the question you need to ask, and the answer to that question must come out of your years of understanding yourself. In other words, I would always say, in digital humanities, do a PhD if you like digital humanities. In digital humanities, do a PhD in ways that will quench your thirst as a person, as an intellectual, as an individual. That is how, otherwise, if our heart is not involved, if only our brain is involved, something will always be lacking. Learn things by heart as well, not by brain alone, but by heart as well. So bring that heart into it. And it is not just about digital and humanities, it is also about another binary, your brain and your heart. So that, interest factor should be there when you wish to pursue a PhD. And don't be guided by what you see on the internet or the boom of materials that is being bombarded onto you in discussions on digital humanities. Stick to what you are comfortable with. I always want to stress this. Never do a PhD on things you are uncomfortable with. You're comfortable with digital humanities, fine. What in digital humanities are you comfortable with? Is it the digital? Is it the humanities? Is it the ethical dimension? Is it the computational aspect? Is it the philosophical thing? Did you get something from today's lecture that tells you, that invites you to do some psychoanalytic, um, you know, interrogations into digital humanities? Ask these questions before you start asking questions like what my research gap is or what my research questions are. Those questions are secondary. First, you need to understand yourself, and that is something I was telling through this lecture as well. It is about us. Doing any research is about us. So understand yourself first, and then understand your topic, and then see the intersections where there is a heart, where you love the intersection. Those are the intersections you have to extrapolate and work on and read more about, and that will take you, that part is not the toughest part, but to know what your opinions are, what your choices are, where you situate yourself within digital humanities. I think that is where um, your salvation lies in digital humanities. Shatrupa ma'am, thank you for being on video all the time. I could look at someone and talk throughout the lecture, special times. What do you think of virtual reality apps and the immersive realities they create? Experiencing the secret annex, I don't know, the hiding place of Anne Frank, for example, through VR apps. Well, virtual reality can take a, that was another discussion that I wanted to have, but I stopped short of today. When you want to talk about virtual reality and immersive realities that they create, of course, you can, I mean, and just pointing certain people and certain ideas. Think of Jean Baudrillard and his idea of simulacra. The digital humanities work with signs that often no longer have a referent. Sentiment analysis, lot of things are there. And this is where you can think of virtual reality apps and immersive realities, where those reality becomes your reality more real than your own reality. Are we mapping literature or mapping simulations of it? Are we mapping our own lives or are we trusting the simulations of it? You can use Sloterdijk's spheres. Social, this when we talk about virtual VR and virtual reality, immersive reality. You know, you can think of Sloterdijk's ideas of spheres or bubbles, artificial bubbles of meaning, spherology he calls it, and these are like digital wombs of thought. And when we are lost in virtual reality or immersive reality, we are once again, if Lacan would tell us that we are in the mirror stage, we become babies. Through Sloterdijk, you are going back to the womb. Which womb? The digital womb, the digital womb of thought. And of course, you can think of Foucault's archaeology of knowledge and uh, look at virtual reality as a new epistemic regime. You can use Kristeva's objection and look at virtual reality as something that has its object. There are errors as well in virtual reality, there are problems as well, and that is why simulations sometimes fail when it comes to, there is this famous movie where a pilot landed the flight in water. I cannot recall the name of the movie. If somebody can post it in the chat box, that would be nice. A pilot lands an aeroplane, it's an actual incident, uh, properly in London, I guess, in a river, and all passengers in that flight survived. But in that movie, what is shown is he is taken through an interrogation, like court martial, something is happening. And through all those procedures, what they rely on is simulations. Simulations are done, and in every simulation that they do, what happens is it shows that even if those technical deficiencies were there with another flight, that flight could have been landed safely in an airport rather than on water. This is what the simulations showed. But then the hero, the pilot in the movie, he puts this question to the judges. Put, all those things are fine, but bring those human elements into it. Try to say in those simulations that this person is going through such and such stress, and the time element as well. Now you are feeding all these things into it and asking it to simulate, it will do it in a perfect way. But this pilot in real life had to take a decision in a fraction of a second, put all those things also into the equation and do the simulation. What happened? The simulation failed terribly. Not a single passenger would have survived. And I don't know whether this actually happened in real life as well in the exact same way. But this is something that teaches us a lot. Simulations can do many things, but simulations can't do everything. And that is where we have to, yeah, Captain Sully. Yes, yes, yes. Dr. Shalom, thank you so much. Captain Sully, that is the movie. Very intense movie. True, true. That movie is, you feel like it is dragging, it is, but at the end, it just takes you to another level. Captain Sully, an absolute gem of a movie. It is available somewhere on the internet, I'm sure. Uh, so yeah, there are multiple options. Uh, I don't have a specific take on it in the sense because I'm not an expert in. I haven't even got a lot of opportunities, and I'm not very interested in gaming. So virtual reality simulations can, but then I have seen certain things happening with people. For example, you do a simulation where you are in a mountainous terrain, or in a place which is snowing, and suddenly you start feeling frostbite. Your throat starts itching. You start sneezing. How are you going to put these things in digital humanities? How can you categorize these things that happens to a person? You know, some kind of emotional empathization happens where you put yourself in that particular, position, and you start sneezing because it is snowing, or you are at the seashore and you start feeling something that only an ocean can bring to you in virtual. So it is beautiful. It is immensely rewarding when it comes to space explorations or going to the times of the dinosaurs. Lot of possibilities are there, and we cannot deny its advantages. It has advantages, it has disadvantages. How we devise our choices matter, but also how we look at this human element. Because this lecture is about the human in digital humanities, not humanities in digital humanities. That is why I want to stress on the human in the human element, the Sully element, Captain Sully element in virtual reality. Thank you. Could you share your views on graphic literature and its related relation to digital humanities? Jaypriya ma'am, graphic literature, the person who has commented just above you, Shatrupa ma'am, she is the right person to ask that question to, because she is working on graphic literature, and she will give you insights on how digital humanities connects with graphic literature. I'm not a graphic literature person, and probably you could also ask the resource person who spoke last. She was talking on manga, Japanese manga, and how it connects to digital humanities. I guess that lecture must have given you this thought of graphic literature and its relation to digital humanities. Talk to knowledgeable people. I'm not good at graphic literature, sorry. Thank you for your question, but uh, I don't know much about graphic literature. And ask the person who just commented 2 minutes before you, Shatrupa ma'am. She is good at graphic literature. Um, yeah. So okay, thank you, Jaypriya ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I think that's it. If anyone has a question, please feel free to ask. Could
So we have one more question in the chat box. Can you
can
just
you
address
okay
that
okay
alone?
yeah, can you please share your email ID? Yeah, sure. My name at gmail.com.
Sir, you have muted.
Okay, I saw the question. It is asking for my email address, right? I'm typing it in the chat box. My name at gmail.com, or you can use my mobile number as well, 9496 322. I have put it on the chat box. Please feel free to contact Rekkani Ravindran. Please feel free to contact on WhatsApp or on email. Both are fine. Okay, there is another question with reference to psychoanalysis theory, where you have mentioned the varied interpretations by the reader. So, how can I guide my junior college students to make use of digital communication positively and in a communicative manner? I guess Deepti ma'am, Deepti, yeah, what you can do is to be a model, and that is what we teachers can do. We can show them how to use uh, technology effectively, positively, beautifully, constructively, and by being those role models for our students. And um, you know, we can drop breadcrumbs in our classrooms. Students will follow. Students follow. I mean, we can say teachers are outdated, teachers are mere facilitators, but still students follow where teachers flock. And so leave certain breadcrumbs. For example, today we were talking about psychoanalytic ways of looking at digital humanities, philosophic ways of looking at digital humanities. Throw some breadcrumbs to them and see the response. Some of them will take the bait positively, and you will then know that okay, there is something, some light shining somewhere, because you find a shadow. A shadow of doubt on some face would mean some light of interest is shining somewhere. So use that and entice them, to the beautiful and you know humanitarian and humanities side, or whatever you feel is important to those sides of digital humanities, use of social media, communication systems. Throw those breadcrumbs and invite them, entice them, because as teachers of language and literature, we are taught the art of seduction and enticement only. We are not taught computational linguistics. We are not taught interpreting data sets. That is not what is that is not what comes naturally to us. Many of us may have adapted, many of us may have learned, but our primary tool is our word. We use words to entice people. We call it rhetoric, we call it seduction, we call it enticement. If we are able to do things like the sirens, what sirens do to the listeners of their songs, so enticed that you cannot do anything else. You have to rush to them, even if it means your death, even at the cost of your life. If you follow that knowledge, if you follow that music, then that is what a teacher can do. And uh, there will be many Ulysses in our classrooms, and tie them to their mast, and uh, cover everyone's ears with wax, and then give them these breadcrumbs and see who follows. Sing to them like the sirens and see how many of them come to your island, and they will definitely taste the milk and honey that mm, as Coleridge would say at the end of what is it? Kubla Khan. Mm, For he on honey dew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. So give them a taste of what you have tasted, give them a taste of what you have enjoyed, and then they will say, oh, he on honey dew hath fed, or she, Deepti, on honey dew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. So let me also have a taste of that same paradise. We entice, we seduce, we mesmerize with words, and we invite our students to participate and partake in in the wonderful feast called literature, and its intersection with humanities and the digital that we have partaken in. Invite them to the same feast and hold them by the collar, like how Coleridge's mariner held the wedding guest by the collar and tell your story. Tell your story, and the wedding guest will stay. In the feast, the guest would say, stay. And and there we will have our salvation as well. The curse, the albatross that is around your neck, around our necks. I think this is our albatross. This technological thing is hanging around our neck. This is our albatross, and this albatross around our neck can be loosed only when we, hold these wedding guests coming to the marriage of digital and humanities by their collar and tell them the sad story of what happened or good stories of what will happen and if you do the right things. And then that act of expression, that act of articulation will liberate you, from not only the albatross but also all the curses, will give you what we call the catharsis. The catharsis. Yeah, I mean, there are so many ways to answer this question, but I would answer it that way. Thank you for that question, Deepti. Anything else? Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Can you
Yes.
please answer the question which is asked by Alisa Sheikh just before the email ID?
Yes.
Mm.
Email.
Could you
Alisa
please
Sheikh, yeah,
answer?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very incredible and insightful lecture. Alisa Sheikh, okay, Alisa, hi. Could you please emphasize the role of readers in this interactive narratives, digital humanities, and e-literature? Well, without reader doesn't nothing happens, right? Think of reader response theory. A text comes to exist only when there are readers. So digital humanities requires readers, everything requires readers, and only when readers are there to make sense of it, to understand it, to interpret it, to misinterpret it, to uh, dissect it, and make all this parsing, only then anything would make sense. I don't know if I have understood the question correctly. You are asking what is the role of the reader, right? So I think that reader's role is very obvious. Role of readers in interactive narratives. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In narratives that are interactive, right? You're okay. Mm, Alisa, if you can unmute yourself, are you asking
Yeah,
something?
sir, actually, I'm asking that means in traditional literature, what happens is readers are just passive listeners or means, but right now readers are also working as an active agent, means the collaborators. This is what I'm asking.
I think this is something that reader response theory anticipated. Readers as collaborators in the meaning creation process. And yeah, and it has come to life thanks to the latest technologies where readers actively interact and decide the course of stories. Even there are stories where you write along with the author or you write along with the AI software, and the story is collaboratively written, like poetry, for example. One person writes a single. Alisa, thank you for coming online on video. So one person writes one line of poetry, another person writes the second line, and the poem takes shape through an act of collaboration. Something like that is made possible through um, technology as well these days. People write entire books in collaboration with AI, and the direction where things are moving is decided not by technology alone, not by human being alone, but by the act of collaboration. So this is a very interesting collaboration where man and machine actually collaborate in the creative process. Um, if you want to use a very odd metaphor, you can go back to Dr. Faustus and think of what happened when Dr. Faustus asked for Helena, Helen of Troy. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burned
Thousands.
the topless towers of Ilium? Sweet Helen, make me immortal with a kiss. And then we find that he made love to this devil. It is not actually Helen of Troy. It is the devil Mephistopheles who comes there and appears as Helen of Troy. So we say, in among the many sins that Dr. Faustus committed, the second most important one, apart from giving his soul to the devil, was to make love, to involve in the act of creativity with a devil, with a demon. Huh? So isn't it something like this? When I mean, I know it is a crude comparison, but I see that crudeness in reality as well, because when we enter into the act of creation with AI, you know we do not know what might emerge. And I have serious doubts whether the product would look something like Frankenstein. See, Frankenstein, right? It is haphazardly formed, not fully formed, and it understands conquering heart as only taking the heart out of the heroine. So are we doing that? Because machines don't have certain things that we have, and we don't have certain things that machines have. So are we doing something like that? Or in a humorous way, Kurt Vonnegut presented this kind of collaboration between man and machine in the story Epicac, Epicac. It is the machine, a machine that falls in love with a lady, and a man, the programmer, uses the scripts generated from this, like what we do now. We to write a love letter, we no longer use our brain. We use give the prompt to AI, and it gives us the love letter, and we hand it over to the girl or the boy we love. And what happens after marriage also, you will need this AI to generate things for you, because in reality you cannot produce anything. So what will happen if technology falls in love? You collaborate, and many collaborations end up in marriage and then in divorces as well. So what if you collaborate with a machine in a creative process? Technology can as well look at all the data available, and collaboration and creativity. Technology will immediately think of ideas like love and marriage. I mean, I'm just extrapolating it, making it funny, but the point is, it is fraught with dangers as well, to everyone, to machines as well, because in Kurt Vonnegut's story, the machine short circuits itself to death. It commits suicide at the end. So that can happen to machines, because machines have far simpler feelings. At least if they have feelings, their feelings are far more simple and far more innocent than our feelings, which are very complicated. Or it might lead to something like a Frankenstein monster. So what do we want? How do we want to use it? It's an interesting field. What you the question you have posed, the intersection where readers meet technology in the creative process, is amazing. It is fraught with opportunities and dangers. It can I think we will have a lot more such science fictional things coming up in the coming decade. Hopefully there will be some writers and directors who don't fully rely on technology and AI, because then they will not be able to write anything original like us. Like, we are not able to produce anything original these days because we rely a lot on technology. Over reliance should not be there. So yeah, always the principle of moderation, always the principle of homeostasis. Be a little careful before you plunge headlong and head straight into technology. That's good, but use, not abuse or misuse. And readers' role is, readers can shape, co-shape. We have become co-creators, and we are no longer creators on our own. And it can be a way of looking at it as an instance of intertextuality, where, Alisa, yes, you want to ask something else?
No, sir, I got it.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. Have I missed anybody? Okay, we have people leaving, so lunch must be ready. Mm. So Yeah, over to you, Abhirami, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, sir. After becoming a faculty, attending literature classes become so scarce. And after a long time, I felt like I'm sitting in and attending a literature class. Thank you so much for that.